Welcome to Thematic Block 2, Learning Theme 4. This will look at the whole concept of evaluation with your students and students as co-researchers. The level of proficiency for this video is leadership. So in this video, we will support you in the learning outcome to evaluate the effectiveness of digital enhanced teaching strategies in your practice. We will look at how you might evaluate with your students and students or children as co-researchers. So it's important to consider when you're looking at evaluation, you can also involve your students as co-researchers. I suppose here the goal is to shift power and acknowledge the children's expertise in their own life and give them responsibility of having a say in their learning environment. Also developing the ability for them to be researchers as a transversal skill and support them to construct their own knowledge is really, really important. We'll also look at maybe how it can be used to, research skills can be integrated in particular curricula such as maybe maths or English language to develop competencies or skills in those curricular areas. So there's two models of participation. So HEART actually has a ladder of participation, but we'll look at kind of two modes. So children can act as an advisory capacity in which you can tell the children that you're doing research with them, and they can meet you regularly to advise on maybe ethics or data collection approaches or to review findings, so they provide you with support through the evaluation of digital teaching and learning, and you kind of consult with them. Alternatively, children can actively participate or become co-researchers in the research process, and you can decide whether they can be full co-researchers or part co-researchers. So they could be involved in all of the phases of evaluation, such as identifying focus, designing data collection tools, collecting data, analysing data, or communicating the results, or maybe they might be just part of one of these. So we look at each of these phases and how students might be involved in each phase. So you could engage students in identifying an area of focus for the evaluation. So what would you like to learn more about how you use technology to help you learn? And maybe working with children on brainstorming walls where they pick out what we should find out about. They might write down their ideas, put them up on a wall, and then you can maybe do a poll or something for the top 5 common areas up for investigation, and they can vote on their favourite approach. Also, if you're looking at maybe research questions or things like that, you can get them to design their own question cards, or creating ideal research toolkits with craft materials where they can look at, what it's like to be a researcher of their own learning. So encouraging them maybe to identify an area of focus, or helping or working with them, or maybe you can decide a number of areas of focus that you're going to explore and the children can vote on their favourite one, so you can maybe use a hybrid one. The second area is where they can co-design data collection tools. So maybe ask the children what types of data they can, or types of activity they can use to collect the data, and give them a choice. So rather than maybe deciding that interviews is the best way, maybe picking 2 or 3 activities and the children decide which one they want to engage in, or maybe the children design their own data collection activity. So examples of age-appropriate ways of gathering data is draw and tell, maybe where they tell a story or draw a drawing or a comic about their experience of the learning environment or how using a particular tool made them feel. Photo voice, maybe when they're engaging with the digital pedagogy, that they take pictures of their favourite activities during the activity, and then afterwards they explain maybe why these are their favourite activities in the digital pedagogical approach. Building activities where you might get them to design something, design a lesson or design a learning activity that might be appropriate before they test, and maybe using Lego or Play-Doh or drawing to do that. Or maybe a role play where they act out scenarios where they have to take a quiz under a particular time pressure, or They have to construct questions and talk about their experience and how they feel. So maybe given a scenario like, pretend you're a student that's taking a quiz and you don't know the answer. Time is ticking. Tell us what you're going to do, what's going to happen. So these are all lovely ways of collecting data with your students, or asking them to choose different methods, or maybe they, as I say, there could be others that they could design. And this teaches them skills such as creativity. I suppose the previous element of identifying research focus could help them with decision making, also question construction, also maybe empathy, and looking, if you pose a particular question, what what people might feel about it if they're asked those questions and things like that. Then the next area might be the children might actually do the research themselves. So you might have a child nominated a number of children as interviewers. So they might be responsible for interviewing other students about the research, or you might pair people up and they might have to interview each other about the digital pedagogy or how the teaching and learning approach made them feel. I suppose it's important to maybe give them some training around this and asking the importance of, or telling them the importance of asking questions gently and respectfully, asking people permission to do research with them, maybe giving them interview scripts or prompt cards, and sticking to the questions, but supporting them to do it in a kind of a kind way. As I said, also, doing ethical research, asking for permission to participate, for asking permission to interview the person, giving them information about the study before they consent, and giving them opportunities to withdraw from the research if they want. So these all teach skills in ethics and empathy. Also, teaching them maybe that they need to record, to take notes about the interviews and how to do that. The other area where the children can be responsible or act as co-teachers is analysing the data. So once you've gathered the data, maybe getting children to code and sort the data. And again, ethics can come into this. So looking at anonymising data. So rather than giving the transcript and naming people, that they have to give pseudonyms, giving children an opportunity to choose a pseudonym for themselves, asking them to sort things into categories which might align to maybe logical thinking and problem solving and maths questions. Once they've put them into piles, maybe place them on a continuum of least to most important, looking maybe for patterns in data, which again applies to logic and maths thinking. So I suppose this helps them make sense of the data and shows how maybe they interpret findings, or how something might have different meanings or interpretations. Also teaching them, when sometimes quotations are taken out of an overall interview, that, sometimes they can read it a little bit differently, and the importance of looking at context when they're extracting pieces of information, and that can teach maybe information literacy and things like that. So there's lots of transversal skills they can develop through the co-researching process. Also, deciding what to communicate. So once they've analysed the data, identifying what messages matter most, what information needs to be shared with different people. So what information needs to be shared with their teachers or the principal of the school, with the parents, and if they're sharing with other people, how they might protect their identities and the outputs, and make sure that nobody knows who's saying that particular piece of information. Again, this aligns to ethics. So again, this teaches them with communication skills, language, and also ethics and empathy. Lastly, students might co-create the research output. So once they've decided what to share, they might create a poster with the key findings, or maybe a short film that might summarise the result. Maybe some children or a panel might do a presentation for a school assembly, or maybe they might draw photos about what the research displays and maybe present it. Again, this aligns to language and communication skills and helps them to develop skills in that area. So there's lots of opportunity for that. In terms of the impact of the student voice, I suppose what it does is it shifts the power dynamics, and it gives children responsibility of their own data, their own experiences, their own learning. It builds a number of skills, in particular research skills and the ability to analyse. It can align to some curricula such as maths and language. Also, it can increase student engagement. So you probably will find, because students are using tools and looking at different teaching tools and giving the teacher feedback about different pedagogical approaches, that they're more engaged and they feel more valued within the learning environment. So it can add a real dimension to the learning experience. So some key takeaways. It's important to involve children throughout your research process in some way, either as an advisory capacity or a full or part co-researcher, or maybe consultants. It's important that we use creative, age-appropriate methods. So interviews and focus groups mightn't be always the most appropriate way. Opportunities to express themselves in different ways, or maybe choose a different way. It's important that if you're undertaking research with children, that you teach them the ethical research practices, and if they're not acting as co-researchers, that you model this and you explain. So you're asking them for permission to do interviews, that you explain why you're doing that, and that they can choose a pseudonym to protect their identity and stuff like that. And also supporting children to share their findings that amplify their voice and provides them with an opportunity to be heard is really important. So this adds another dimension to digital teaching and learning, and provides opportunities for students to have a say in how technology is used to support their learning, and have a say in how we move forward with regard to a vision for digital teaching and learning. Thank you.